Hi everyone, this is Sharon. Today I would like to share this custom prayer journal with you that I just finished for an order. This was a pretty fun one to make. I like the size of it mostly, and I also had a really beautiful mid-1800s French book that I used for the cover. This one was a religious book about the Vatican and one of the popes of the time. I cinched this up, this closure, with this beautiful blue velvet ribbon, and I also used a vintage buckle. I just kind of slide that ribbon through the buckle. This book had a very narrow and broken spine, so what I had to do was to create a new one, and it's a bit of a flexible spine. I used a piece of like a herringbone wool tweed fabric, and I just really like the way that complements the golds on the cover. And I decided to use an exposed spine because the person asked for kind of a medieval themed or style journal, and I just thought that kind of lended itself to that style. And the spine piece then I've reinforced on the inside, but it's glued and also stitched to the two covers. This journal has 7 signatures, quite a few pages. It's about a 2¼ inch spine, and the back is as beautiful as the front. So going inside, I used primarily 2 main sources for my digitals in this journal: Medieval Mirage and Raindrop Lila. Those are the 2 main ones, and of course I've incorporated some others as well, which I usually do. So the inside cover, I used this image from the kit from Raindrop Lila. And then you can see here's that wool tweed fabric again that I've got coming on the inside from the spine. And then also on the inside, I've used a piece of men's suiting. It's a lightweight wool. And I've really been enjoying using some of these lightweight men's suiting wool lately in my journals. I just love the way they look. And typically you can go to a thrift store and find an entire suit for like $3 to $5. So you really get a lot of value for your money. And I don't know if you can kind of see it in between there, but it's kind of a gray striped wool that I've got on there. And that just helps reinforce that spine as well. So as we head into the first signature, I've got a pocket here. Again, I've got a piece of wool men's suiting for the pocket. And in there, I've got this little journaling piece. Some places to write. This is an old religious catalog with religious items for sale. This is an image. And I just love some of the pages in there. This is the title page from that book, and it's dated 1867. I've done some stamping on the pages. This is a very old piece of French, it's like a French document, and I'm trying to remember the date. It's probably mid-1800s or early 1800s. Here I did a little stenciling with some stenciling paste. And then in the center of the signature, I have this image. On this page, I've incorporated some of the book pages from the original book. You'll see those throughout. And then here I just have this little journaling spot. Some parchment paper, place to write there. And then the back is this world map. It's an old world map, which I love. It's got all the animals of the world around the outside. In this pocket, I made this tag. And that opens up. on these pages, these signature pages are from Medieval Mirage, and I've just embellished those here and there. I've got a little bit of metallic, and then on the first page, I didn't mention it, but of course on the bottom there's a wax seal. They don't need much embellishing, but it's fun to just add a little bit. And then in between the signatures, I've got some treated napkin. I know a lot of you have seen my tutorial on how to create this. You get a very nice, crinkly kind of rice paper feel to it. And I will link that video down below if you want to check it out. And then here again on this page, I embellished with some trim, this image. Did a little collaging on that side of the page. This is from a vintage bird book that I have. This came from an old German religious book. And then here I've got a couple of shallow pockets where I folded the page up and I just lined those with some fabric on top. And then in there I've got this vintage prayer card. And then this is a very old French letter. I know there's a date on it. 1868. And it's just got the most beautiful handwriting on the inside. The letterhead, and then looks like some type of an invoice. One of my favorite pieces I put in here. And then in the center of the signature, I have this image. It's kind of a tabletop image with some fruit and food and flowers. I just love the colors in there. And then in this shallow pocket on this side, again, the other side of that German book, I've got this tag. And I just created a little side tucker on the back where I inserted this little journaling piece. Here I created a belly band with a piece of that beautiful blue velvet ribbon, and I just did a little bit of embossing on there. And then in that pocket, I made this, it's kind of like a trifold. Got a little piece of script on there, and then the inside there's a pocket in the middle. I've got this tag in there. And then just some places to write on each side. This is what the back looks like. This is what that beat up spine looked like, this piece. And I just adhered it to a piece of old leather. And I thought that would make a nice bookmark. On the top of this page, I used some vintage and antique fabrics and trims. And then on this side, I created a corner pocket. In the background page is this image of a church, and I just did a little punching on the top of that page. And then in there, I have this journaling spot, some piano paper. This is what the back looks like. In this pocket, I have probably my most favorite prayer card that I've ever purchased. The embossing on it is just beautiful. It's in really nice shape. It's got this gold. You probably can't see it so well on camera, but there's gold, copper, this really dark kind of a brown burgundy color. It's a French prayer card, and it's dated 1917. In the middle of the signature, I have a lot going on. I created, I've got these sides that are folded in, and I just decided to create a little clasp here. So this opens up, and I put a little piece of leather on there with a little grommet to hold the string. And that opens up, and this side I've got the same. That opens up. And then in here I've got 2 pockets. This is some antique paper that I really like. It's got some nice jewel tone colors on there. So up in this pocket I have this little kind of a journaling card. And then on this side as well. On this page, I clipped on, this is an old postcard from 1894. Just added this little dragonfly on there for a little embellishment and some baker's twine. And then on the back, I've got this little side tuck again on here. It's got some beautiful handwriting. And then this is an old check from 1896. On the back of that clip, I had this little, just a little decorative item, I guess. And then over on this side in this pocket, I've got this pocket. It's kind of like a floating pocket, and it's made from some eco-dyed paper, an image. And then I just tuck this little tag in there. I've got this pretty, really soft, kind of a turquoise velvet ribbon on there. Then on this side, I created 2 bands kind of to hold the items in. So one's going straight across, one's coming diagonally. And I kind of like doing that because it just keeps everything in nicely. I've just got some antique and vintage ephemera pieces there. The backdrop is another image of the other side of that church. Then in the center of these 2 signatures, I tucked this card. It's it says the finest pulpit in the world, Cathedral, Brussels, Belgium. And it's got an 1892 date on it. That's what the back looks like. It's very hard. It could actually be used as a writing board. And then here on this signature, I've got, again, some velvet and this wax seal. And then on this side of the page, I have this kind of vellum belly band, and I just did a little printing on the top of that and stitched it in with some decorative stitching. And then in there, I tucked a couple of items. I made this envelope. There's just a couple of vintage items tucked in there. And then here is a page, again, from that catalog with some religious items for sale. And I just did some stamping on the back of that, or stenciling, I guess that is. Here's a piece from a magazine dated 1871. I've used that on the pockets previously, and it's just got these really rich colors to it. Then in this shallow pocket, I've got a German book page back here. Again, I've got a really old French letter from 1846. And just open that out. It's got some beautiful handwriting on it. And again, the letterhead on there is just really beautiful. And then I've got, this I believe came from Portugal. I don't know if it's in Portuguese, but that's where it came from. Just a vintage receipt, not even vintage. It's dated 1988. Here, again, I used one of those beautiful tabletop images with some fruit and flowers. And then on the inside, I've got, I made a couple of pockets from some labels from Roxy Creations. And then I've got these tiny little kind of tags, bookmarks. This is the first time I tried my hand with some gold leaf on the back. I just did it on top of that embossing. And then this one's the same. On this side in the pocket, I've just got a few journaling cards that I've punched together and put them together with this little metal, and I back them with some of the book pages. This is the other side of that page from the magazine, Peterson's magazine. And what I really love is you've got all the colors on this side, and it kind of bled through this side, so you just get the pattern in kind of some sepia tones. On this page, I've got another vellum belly band that I did some printing on. And in there, I tucked this coffee dye piece of paper that I did stenciling on with some paint. And then this check, dated 1927. Here I added a tab with some decorative trim, and then I also have some cheesecloth running down the side of the page with decorative stitching on it. This side tuck, I've got this page from an embroidery magazine. Again, I just love the rich colors in there. Here I took a vintage envelope, and I like it's got this really old kind of amber window in it, and I just put an image of Mary on the back of that. And then on this side, I lined the envelope with an image. The inside of the envelope was this really deep blue color, and I lined it, and then at the top I folded it over to create a top tuck and just added some paper on there. And then there I've got this tag, and I just have a piece of fabric that I stamped on the back. This is the center. I've got some very old Italian trim on there. German book page that flips out, and this is the image on the inside. And then in there I tucked, this is some vintage wallpaper. I just made this journaling card. This is an image, looks like an old kind of silk tapestry. And then I added this piece on the top with some machine stitching on there. Here's the other side of that envelope. And then I've got this tag in there. On this page, I took some prayer card images and stitched them onto some paper doilies and just created these flip outs. And adhered those with some washi tape, and then did a little bit of stenciling on the back. This is a page from the book. On this side, I again used some cheesecloth with decorative stitching, and then I also incorporated into that stitching this little piece, and that acts as a tuck. And I've just got this little eyelet in there. And then in there, I tucked this little tag. And I just, again, stitched a little side tuck on there, place to put a little journaling spot. And then this is a 1954 piece of ephemera that I got from Portugal. Again, I'm not sure about the what language it's in. I'm assuming Portuguese, but it may not be. Another wax seal with the piece of fabric on there. Here I just created a top tuck, layered up some paper that I stenciled, a little piece of cheesecloth, a little stitching on there. This is a very old piece of ledger paper from the 1840s. Just love the script on there. On this page, I created a side tuck, and I embellished that with some old trim, punched the edge of that, and then in there I have this card and this book page with the pretty birds, a poem on the back. And this beautiful floral piece on the inside. The rich colors again, which I absolutely love. I think jewel tones are my favorites. And then on this side tuck, again, I embellished on the top. I've got a little bit of velvet ribbon, some old cloth, piece of paper. And then in there I have this floating pocket that I used the eco-dyed paper image again, and I just put some fancy trim on the side. And then in there I tucked this card. And then with this kind of tab here, I created a side tuck again with another piece that you can journal on. On this page, I used some old brass brads and just attached this old piece of lace. And then this is a remnant from an old religious garment. And then some layering on the bottom. And I just embellished the top of that with a stamped piece of paper. Some embellishing on this page. Here I've got a vellum belly band again, and in there I've got this page of fruit, and then some stenciling on the back. This is from an older date book, and I just added a little cluster on the top. And this page has a pretty long flip out, so hopefully we can get it all in. And way at the end here, I've got a couple of pockets, and I tuck some little tags in there. Here's an original book page that just had some really nice old vintagey look to it, and I just stamped the edge of it. On this page I clipped this postcard, and I just did a little of stenciling on the back. It's dated 1929. And then here I've got a wax treated piece of paper. I put a little tab on there. This is what the inside looks like. And then on this side of the page, this is a book page, and I clipped on this little journaling spot. Again, it's kind of like a trifold. It's got this pretty image on the back. And then I used these old brads again and just cinched in some papers. This is an old invoice copy from, it looks like 1913. So I've got that piece of painter's masking paper, and then the back is stenciled, but you could still use that for writing. This I had clipped with that other piece on this page, but it's just a nice old piece that can be used to write on. And then another cluster on the top of this page. This is actually a flip out, but I've got this side turned into an envelope, and in there I tucked a couple of items, vintage piece, and then this card that I made. And this is the back cover. So that is the prayer book I recently completed. I hope you enjoyed that flip through, and I will be back again soon with something, either a tutorial or a flip through. I'm not sure yet, but hope to see you soon. Until then, bye-bye.